Welcome to the Growth Minded Accountant podcast, where our experts will share best practices on running your firm in the digital age. This podcast is brought to you by CountingWorks Pro. Let's get started.
Hi, and welcome to the Growth Minded Accountant podcast. I'm excited to have you here today for another exciting conversation about finding your niche in a crowded market. We have spoken about this topic previously, but as we continue to engage our client base during our marketing concierge meetings, more and more questions are arising about niching and how to do it and why to do it, how to choose my niche. So we're going to hopefully tackle that and answer a lot of those questions for you. So most tax and accounting firms, you start out as a generalist. And obviously the reason this is because when you first start out, you're just hungry for clients, right? So you will take clients that are all different specialties, different types of businesses, different types of 1040 type clients. And then what happens is they refer their friends, and then you have a mismatch of clients. So it's a little more difficult to really focus and kind of own a niche. And there's a lot of reasons that you want to be able to do that. So today we're going to explore how choosing a specific niche can help your practice stand out and grow. I am joined, as usual, with Rebekah Barton, our Chief Visibility Officer. We're taking this podcast off of an article she wrote in our blog, on our accountingworkspro.com blog, called Ready to Outrun Generalist Tax Firms, Find Your Niche and Pick a Lane. So we're going to dive into her insights. And again, a lot of the conversations, we're just sharing some of the conversations we're having with our subscriber base. And I think there's a lot of things that can apply to many of you. So you're going to learn how to identify and serve your ideal clients and explore some of the most lucrative niches in the tax and accounting world. So let's get started. Rebekah, say hello, and then I will start with a couple questions.
Hey, everybody. Looking forward to diving into this today.
And I kind of got to this a little bit, but what inspired you to write this particular article about choosing a niche over being a generalist?
So I think I talk a lot to our clients, right? I'm on the phone with people all day long. And one of the biggest issues that people run into, so I have a questionnaire I go through with our clients as I onboard them. And one of my questions is, who is your ideal client? And a lot of them are like, well, I want to niche down, but I just haven't done it because I don't know who I want to work with. And I hear it probably 5 or 10 times a week, seriously. And it's something that comes up over and over again. So I just wanted to write another article about kind of doubling down on this and why it really matters and how it can help you, even if it seems counterintuitive. That's another fear I encounter a lot, is that people are afraid they'll lose clients and lose money by narrowing their niche. And that just really isn't true. So I think it's important to establish that.
Yeah, it's almost the exact opposite. I think there is some fear, but let's say you have an existing client base of 350 clients, but I guarantee you already have niches within that 350. And I would probably go as far to say, let's say you have 20 clients that fit into a specific area. You like working with them probably more because it takes you less time to answer their questions. You already know the answers, right? There's not as much research if it's a brand new client in a brand new niche. And you probably offer a lot more insight than you would to a client who you don't totally get. So coming from, that's what I'm saying right now. I mean, what would you say then are some of the immediate benefits, tax pros and accountants can see when they start niching down?
More money, for one thing. Once you establish expertise in a specific area, you're going to be able to charge more. And like Lee said, you're going to be more comfortable. So you're going to feel more confident in your ability to charge more and deliver an appropriate level of value to people who are within that niche. Secondarily, again, just playing off what Lee said, you're going to save time. If you already know the process for these specific industries that you're specializing in, you're not going to have to spend so much time researching specific deductions, researching issues they may encounter, pain points for that industry, because they're going to become second nature to you because you've worked with those types of clients with such frequency.
And then you get them and it's easier, but then how does that help impact your client loyalty and referrals? And I'll give you an example. We have a client at the police tax, and they're all obviously law enforcement, but the size of that client base is immense, completely built through word of mouth referrals. And the perception is, or the perceived value, and we have a client that does the production side in Hollywood. So a lot of their clients are producers, directors, and the perception is, okay, I'm choosing this person because they know my specific needs. They might know some tax minimization strategies that others may not know. So it's almost like it's become a wildfire. Like, who are you using? Well, they're just so great. They know us so well, and they're working with all these different law enforcement or movie producers. And there's a perceived value, like let's just say they're going to pay more over time. They're going to then versus a generalist. So instead of picking a CPA who's in Burbank, who's right next to the studios, I'm going with this entertainment CPA. So kind of explain to me a little bit how that loyalty and then kind of the referral wave builds upon itself.
Psychology is very important here, right? Establishing yourself as a brand that specializes in a specific area is going to resonate with people. And then secondarily, the value you provide. So like Lee was saying, when people are happy with your services, they are going to talk about you to their friends, other people they know in their network. And the majority of people they know are likely to be within their own professional network because of different industry events, people they know through, competitors, even if there's different things like that, just people they know who do similar things. So once people start talking about you, like, hey, my tax guy or my tax girl really, really knows this industry. They've saved me X amount of dollars. I've worked with them for 5 years. They know our field. You should be working with them so that you can save money. Then that plants that seed in someone's mind of, I want this too. I want to save money. I want to experience this, and I'm willing to pay whatever it takes to get this same level of service that I'm hearing, my friend, my competitor, my colleague rave about. So obviously over time, then those people start telling other people they know, and it's the network effect, it's the Kevin Bacon effect, it's the snowball effect, whatever you want to call it. It's going to expand your network exponentially just by specializing in that area as that industry starts to know who you are.
Yeah, and then let's take it from just the word of mouth referrals, and kind of the modern way that happened is through reviews. So I have an example. We have an expat tax specialist. All the reviews are from fellow expats, and just even the reviews, the way they talk about you, it's almost like there's some hidden secrets that that a generalist may not know. That is why they are so successful, and it makes it much easier to convert web visitors who are looking for a specific kind of need, or they're starting with, I have expat tax issues in Israel, or whatever, let's say Vietnam. I'm just going to throw out some countries. If you already are standing out and ranking for those type of keywords, and then you have a large review asset, where you have 10, 20, 30 reviews and clients raving about you, about the expat tax services, it's going to be much easier for those people to call and become clients versus a kind of a long lead time. And it's basically, it's a way to create a funnel that's just going to keep growing and growing and growing. So we talked a little bit about, I think the basis of your article was about generalists and how to stand out. So, how do you outrun the generalist tax firms? And I'm going to bring in, believe it or not, some people still don't think this, but the TurboTax Live, and there's all these big firms coming after you. They're coming after your clients at this point. I would consider them generalists. So what are some of the practical steps a tax pro or an accountant can take to differentiate themselves?
So really establishing your brand. And one thing I wanted to talk about that I think fits here is how this actually makes it easier for you to market yourself. Some people get scared when I talk to them that they're going to run out of things to talk about or run out of things to post if they really niche down, niche deep, and start focusing on a narrow audience. But in reality, it makes it easier for you to differentiate yourself and establish yourself, because you don't have to wonder, should I post this very general tax fact, or should I post this super general article? You don't need to, because you have a specified audience who's only going to care about very specific issues. So you can hone in on creating content that other people aren't doing, and that's going to automatically differentiate you, and it's going to provide extreme value to the people who actually care about the service that you're providing. Another thing that I think we've kind of already hit on is just that you're going to have that expertise that a generalist doesn't. People who work in specific industries. I was actually working just this morning before we recorded with a client who only works with real estate investors. That's all he does. And he has a very clear onboarding structure. We're building his whole website based on this very clear onboarding structure that's geared toward a highly specific audience. And he said to me that he doesn't even need his website for marketing anymore. because he needs it to function for his clients. Now, that's not going to be the case for everyone. And I come from the SEO world, so I think ranking is important. But the point here is that you could get to a point that you're getting so many referrals within your industry that your website is built for your current client base, not just to rank. He's more concerned with functionality than with ranking because he has such a clear vision for his onboarding process and for the functionality he needs for this specific niche he has. He's very much differentiated himself from everyone else in the area.
And so I'm going to go two ways. You mentioned a couple nice things there. That's a niche in itself. He's selling a customer experience. He's selling a no friction onboarding process, a no friction process of working on tax and accounting. And that is a big differentiator. You also had mentioned niching down versus niching deep. And I'll give an example so people understand that. So let's say one of our examples for niching down is to work with e-commerce companies. Niche deep would be work with e-commerce companies that use Amazon. And Amazon just did a deal with QuickBooks. So now you're like only specializing in that little group, which is millions and millions of businesses, right? You would not run out of clients if you niche deep to that particular category. And that's what we mean by, specializing. And then when it comes to creating content and messaging around this, it's much easier to speak directly to their needs, their issues. And then when Rebekah was saying, well, I'm worried about running out of ideas, use tools like our Max AI assistant. Basically, I'm working with Amazon e-commerce companies, working with QuickBooks. Can you create a content category calendar for me, or ideas or topics that I can turn into blog articles, podcasts, whatever? You will never run out. And Max will come up with new things, nuances. And then, and since we're talking about this, let's talk a little bit about content clusters. We talk about it almost every third podcast, I think. But understanding how a podcast cluster then becomes an SEO magnet for your firm.
Yes, I love my content clusters. Anybody who's heard us talk before will know this, but they are very important. They are kind of the foundation of good content and the foundation of building web authority. We talked on our last podcast about long tail keywords and the importance of ranking for those. That really comes into play here. So if you haven't listened to that one, go back. We get really into the weeds with long tail keywords, but just for the purposes of this, a long tail keyword is a highly specific phrase that's not just accountant near me, but something like Amazon shop accountant, QuickBooks help, something of that nature that's highly specific. So you could build out a content cluster using AI for any keyword cluster, any keyword that you wanted to rank for. So think about what you want to specialize in. If it is QuickBooks on Amazon, that could be a great one. Put it into AI, say, hey, build me out a content cluster with 10 articles that all range between 600 and 800 words about this topic. I want them to rank well organically on Google, and I want to build authority over time. That's all you have to say. It's going to spit out the topics. Then you can go back and have it write each of those 10 to 15 blog posts over time. I usually recommend posting 1 or 2 a week within a specific content cluster. And as those sit there over 6 months, 12 months, 24 months, Google's going to start realizing that you have real authority in this space. It can also be fun to take one of those blog posts that perhaps does well or you really like and create a secondary content cluster, which we don't talk as much about, based off of that. So almost like a micro content cluster off of a specific topic within your main content cluster. So my point with that is that this is almost an unending way to get content. You can break it down into the most minute details and get really good, highly specific content that's going to help you rank, help you build authority, and even most importantly, provide valuable information to people within your space.
Well, that sounds wonderful, but just writing it and putting it on your blog isn't necessarily going to drive traffic to you. So what are the ways that you would suggest that you can amplify this content? Is it using social media? Are you creating relationships with influencers in the space? Are there perhaps, if you are dealing with Amazon e-commerce companies, is there groups and chat groups and things on social, or even people that write about that subject that you can partner with to really get your messaging and viewpoint, your thought leadership out there? How do you do that?
Yes, to all of the above. I'm really glad you brought this up because that is true. Posting it to your blog is great, But because of authority and things like that, cross-posting content, promoting your content is super important. There are places like TaxBuzz, you can cross-post, Medium, you can cross-post. That's one way to just get your content out there. Cross-post the same blog post even if you want. But as far as promoting something directly from your blog, groups are a great resource. If you are in a specific industry and you want to promote content within that industry, join Facebook groups, join Slack groups. Establish yourself on LinkedIn and join LinkedIn communities. There are lots of different ways to promote your content. Slack is an interesting one that I think a lot of people don't think about. I'm in a few SEO collaboratives on Slack where people just post different things they've noticed, different articles. That can be a really good way to connect within your target market. Also local. Don't be afraid of joining like local groups, especially if you're in an area where you're focused heavily on local small businesses or local business owners. Joining networking groups and joining like their Facebook pages, or even attending physical meetings if you prefer that. That can be a good way to kind of be like, hey, I blog, and get people to start reading your content. So there's lots of different ways to promote yourself. You can also send out emails to your existing client base if you think they might have people to forward it to, and say something like, hey, we just posted this blog, forward it to your friends, forward it to your colleagues. We think there's some really good stuff here and we can help them save money, or whatever the case may be.
All right, awesome. So let's pivot a little bit and talk about some of the challenges and pitfalls. So, what mistakes do you see accounting firms, tax pros typically make when transitioning from a generalist mode to a niche practice? I have a lot to add, so your answer could be great. I could go on for a whole podcast on this one, but what is your point of view on that?
One of the biggest things I personally see just in working with our clients is that they niche into something that isn't really lucrative, in the sense that there aren't many people doing it. So, for example, if you want to work with only Etsy sellers and exclude all other e-commerce, you have to look at the fact that most people on Etsy in particular, I use this example because I had a client who was focusing on Etsy, realized it wasn't going to work, and pivoted to Shopify, which was a lot more lucrative. So on Etsy, people are not making a lot of money, the vast majority of them. There are a few companies that do really well, but a lot of the people there only make, a couple $1,000s a year. They don't have the money to pay someone to do high-end finance services. So that's one thing. Make sure the niche you're niching into actually has people in it who can afford your services. And that is possible. We have so many clients who effectively niche down and see great success. But that's the first thing. And secondarily, make sure it's something you actually enjoy. I noticed that a lot of our clients, when they pick something that they're not passionate about, they kind of lose their footing, and then they stop posting blogs, they stop posting on social, they stop really engaging with us as a strategy team, and we just don't hear from them again. And then they'll come back a year later and be like, yeah, I got really burnt out of focusing on dental practices, if they have no real interest in those types of businesses. So those are my two. Lee, you can roll with it, I'm sure, from there.
Well, I'm going to go with one big one, and then we're going to move on. A lot of times people think they're niching down because they add industries on a tab of industries on their website, and they list 10 industries they work in with a paragraph or so. Unless you're a very large firm that has industry specialists that actually focus on that industry, you're still, to me, a generalist. So you're kind of, tiptoeing into the water a little bit. When we say niching down, we mean really focusing and niching down, and revamping kind of your marketing communications, making sure that your newsletter, for example, is targeting the messaging around that group. And those are things that a lot of times we see people, kind of think they're niching, but they're really not niching. The thing I was going to add is 100% choose your category for something you really like. As you said, lucrative versus non-lucrative. So you can pick something that there's just not enough money in it, right? You can get a lot of clients. So then it's just a pure scalable commodity niche. You can do it at scale. If you use a lot of tech, you can probably get away with it and make it lucrative. But it seems like a lot of work. Putting through 4,500 clients seems a lot harder than 350 that are paying you 10 times as much. So definitely, those are the things I would kind of talk about. So let's get into a little bit of for accountants are who are and we're so I want to do one more question, then I'm going to go into some of the what I call lucrative niches and why. So for accountants who are hesitant, so as an industry, it's kind of the same, do the same way I did it last year every year, right? And the realities are, with AI specifically, the world has changed and it's changing for all industries and professions. I think it is actually pinpointed the limitations of some of this technology that a lot of companies that ran in here and basically were promising we're going to do away with accountants and tax and this and that are all of a sudden going, oh my God, we need the human in the loop more than ever, and their expertise is higher. But so people who are risk resistant, are a little hesitant to pivot, what kind of piece of advice would you offer them to get them kind of over the hump and to go for it?
That you have to dive in, which I know might not be what you want to hear, but
That's not the answer. We're trying to make them feel better. Maybe, how about this? Keep your generalists here and create a niche that you're really into, and then focus all that. And then once you see that working, get more and more comfortable. How's that?
And that's kind of what I mean by dive in. Like, don't be afraid to do it and just try it. You don't have to alienate. That's where I was going. You don't have to alienate your existing client base in order to try niching down. So don't be afraid to try something you're really passionate about. And don't be scared to kind of jump off that cliff, even if you're not fully jumping, even if you're not saying, oh, wait, I'm not going to do these 1040s this year or whatever the case may be. Go ahead and do them. But on the side, be starting that process, right? It doesn't have to be an all or nothing thing at first. Most of the people I work with here slowly niche down. Some of them did it from the start, but the vast majority started as generalists. And then over time, they kind of find their niche, find their little piece of the pie, and then they start slowly focusing on that. So this is not something you have to do overnight, but it's something you should start thinking about because it's becoming increasingly important.
And when we talk about niches, it doesn't always have to be a specific like profession or industry. It could be a service part. This is real generic, but payroll. And being an expert in some aspect of accounting or tax prep is also a niche. And so QSBS stock, for example, I become a niche expert in QSBS stock. I'm creating all my content around that. I'm helping startups basically through it. It's highly lucrative. Lots of money being spent because of the payday and the value is so large that is kind of a way to look at niching, again, not just as an industry or profession, a demographic, so to speak, but it can also be part of a service. So I'm going to get into the most lucrative niches and why. We mentioned one of them already, and that's e-commerce and online businesses. Obviously, as you see, retail is just dying. I mean, today there was another Joanne fabric store closing stores. Party Central just closed a bunch of stores. You're getting like nonstop. And obviously, this is very lucrative, but a lot of these businesses have a lot of complex issues that are really hard to deal with without an accounting pro involved. And I'll talk about e-commerce and online businesses. Obviously, they have growth, they have budgets, they got cash flow, but they have complex multi-state tax rules. A lot of times they employ people all over the country. They're more, they're probably more apt not to have an office. So they're going to have a lot of specialty reporting needs. I know it's a nightmare. I still get the biggest issue with multi-state employees, you can't close the accounts and they come after you long after you've left. And just getting away from it. But it's perfect. That's a very lucrative. A lot of them are doing very well. That Shopify example is great. There's companies killing it, on that. So I would say e-commerce and online businesses, crypto and digital assets, obviously, as these continue to, I think today or yesterday went back up to 97,000. Who knows where it's going to go? And then with the new Trump administration, David Sachs in there on the crypto side. Who knows how they're going to change the regulations? It might be that this is going to blow up, and the demand for people that understand crypto and digital assets and the changes that are made in the regulatory side, there's going to be a big shortage of experts in this field. So that'd be another one. Obviously, real estate investors, property managers. There's a lot of companies now that are buying they have rentals everywhere. They own real estate all over the place. There's 1031 exchanges. There's a lot of different complex regulations too, depreciation. So there's complexity. These are areas that are lucrative. That's what I'm getting into. These clients, have money and they need your services. These are not things that they're going to master and try to keep up with, right? I would add healthcare medical practices. Obviously, it's a huge industry. They have complex accounting needs, reimbursements. There's a lot of areas that they need to handle on payroll complexities, compliance requirements, another lucrative niche. And then I'll end with professional services. So consultants, coaches, attorneys, a lot of them are independent contractors. So they're dealing with clients all over the place. They're basically running mini businesses, right? So they need, retirement planning, tax deferred planning, specialized financial guidance, and they have a lot of more opportunities for deductions and ways to minimize their tax liability. So definitely something to look at. So a couple little, I'm going to call follow-up discussions when you're choosing what we'll call a lucrative niche. Rebekah, you had talked about profitability. So the idea of niche fit versus profitability. So how do you balance that personal interest? I'm really into something, but it might not be a high profit niche. What would you say to people? Kind of how do you guide them and consult them?
There's always an answer for starters. You don't have to panic if you're into something that doesn't immediately seem lucrative. There's probably something related to it or along those same lines that is lucrative. So I think the first thing to do is just really take a solid look at it. Don't move too fast. Take the time to create a plan. Accountants do tend to be very risk averse, which is a good thing in this particular situation because having a solid plan is the best way to niche down. So if you're really into, auto racing, for example, but you don't think that there's enough pit crews who are going to need your tax services, then you could, for example, pivot to working with another type of automobile business, auto dealers, maybe high-end exotic cars, that type of thing, where there are more dealerships, there's more of an opportunity. It's a wider net of people. So that could be something to think about. Just balance that passion with something that you see there's an actual opportunity with, because it can be done no matter what you're into.
Wow, these are getting good. Like I was going to go fly fishing guides, and then people are going to you got to be kidding me. But you could do guides, period, but more in resort areas. So the Jackson Holes of the world, the Montanas, and these guides make a boatload of money. I know we go to Ruby Springs in Montana every year. We go fly fishing for like 4 days straight. There's hundreds and hundreds, thousands of them. There's guides everywhere. All over the country. But this is like a way that I'm really into the outdoors. I'm really into nature. I want to find something. That is a way that you could really kind of figure out a niche, but there's also some money there. They need you because they are independent businesses. They have all kinds of expenses, their boat, their equipment, travel, so on and so on. So, and a lot of them then go from season to season. So I'm just giving you some more examples, but I want to talk a little bit about when it comes to positioning and marketing. Use a tool like Max so once you've kind of figured out what you're doing, say, hey, how do I position myself in this particular vertical? What are the talking points that I should be using? What are the images I should be using? How should I structure my website? How should I structure my onboarding? What should my intake form look like? Rebekah was mentioning a client of ours who basically took their website just for the onboarding. This is how you do it. This is how tools like CountyWorks Pro are built. I mean, we're basically built to make it easier to get a client from awareness to buy-in to engagement and then long-term referrals, right? So use AI technology. It's amazing. If you're a client of ours and you're listening to this, feel free to reach out to us. Maybe, actually during tax season is probably the best time because that's the quietest time for us. This time of year, January, is absolutely madness. Everyone who didn't do anything for the last 6 months is like, oh, I need to start. Oh, I forgot how to do this. So everyone's calling us and we're scrambling, doing the best we can. But definitely
during about 3 weeks right now.
Yeah, well, there you go. So that's why we'll cut this podcast shorter. So I think we've covered a lot of this. One of the things about learning curves perhaps, and diving into a field like crypto, and you may not be there. So what are the ways you can build expertise quickly? I would say, get trained on, go to and listen to every podcast, go to the seminars, go to multiple different ones. So get different points of view. And then from there, you're basically, if you're well seasoned, obviously you have your license, so you're already there. But it makes it a little bit easier for you than to start, jumping right into these clients. That's why I would follow I do Google alerts on the subject that I'm staying in, so that every time something happens, something new happens, you're going to get an alert, and then use a tool like Max to then summarize whatever that alert is. So let's say there's a big regulation that's 300 pages long. You're like, oh my God, I have to read this. Well, have a tool like Max, throw the PDF of the regulations or proposed regulations into Max, tell it to give you a summary, how it applies to your vertical and your service, and it will really help you out. So that's kind of a way to overcome some of this. I had one last thing about long-term growth and diversification. Do you suggest, hey, I've mastered one niche, this thing is rolling, but I built it to a $5 million a year revenue. How do I now take it to the next level? How would you add to that? How would you then diversify?
I think the best way to do it, and the way I've seen people do it successfully, is to find related industries, because then you're not positioning yourself in an entirely different industry, and you're not alienating the clients who already trust you for a specific service or a specific field. So I have a good example of it. I had a client in Maryland. She worked with photographers. That was her niche. She loved working with photographers. She realized that a lot of her clients knew event planners because they focused on weddings. So she started also doing taxes for event planners, and therefore had a twofold but related niche service that she was providing. And it was easier for her too, because there were similarities between the event planners businesses and the photography business. So she didn't have to relearn an industry from the ground up, because there was crossover. So I think something like that is really the best way to go if you want to diversify your niches.
And I'll give you another option. And that was awesome. That's a perfect example. And that kind of goes with my fly fishing and then hunting and whatever. But the other thing that you're seeing is, obviously there's a ton of private equity moving into the accounting space. And the question is, why? Why is that? Because they know that with changes in regulations and ownership, that they are much easier to add on what I'll call a family office type of situation, where I can now add services that are not necessarily core to me, but I can now upsell my services. So let's pretend you're dealing with these dental offices. The layer that you add on would be some sort of insurance products or some sort of investment management products, retirement planning products. So now you've taken your core and you easily have basically upsold, cross-sold into other services. That business is worth a lot more money. And B, the margins actually can be higher. You're seeing that's why all these roll-ups are happening right now. That's why all this private equity money is coming in and rolling in. So that would be the other way I would look at it. We did a family office webinar. If you go to our taxcpe.com site, I have Anton, who's a specialist in family offices, adding these type of services. If you ever want to listen to how it works and why it works, or interested in perhaps exploring that, he's a great resource. He has built an entire kind of family office that sits on top of a CPA firm where they can revenue share. So it's really lucrative and a really good idea. So I just wanted to give you a couple different ideas. Rebekah's is perfect. Mine is another a way to do this, but definitely something you can think of and plan ahead. So I think we've wrapped this up. We're not going to talk about niches or niching deep for a while. Again, the reason we did this, I do think, is we have so many clients still. Not everyone's reading every one of our emails. Not everyone's reading our blogs and watching our YouTube. And at this time of year, we just hear it more than ever. So we wanted to kind of circle back on this topic and maybe go deeper, a little deeper dive, so to speak. So thanks again, Rebekah, for your time and expertise on the power of niche marketing for growth-minded accountants. Please, as usual, feel free to hit the like button and to share this with colleagues. Those that you like, not your competitors. We want to lift the entire industry as we continue to invest in our technology and our offerings. If you have any questions about what we talked about today or want help in choosing your own niche, if you're not a current CountingWorks Pro client, visit our site at accountingworkspro.com. Please follow me on LinkedIn. I will share my blogs. I share my thoughts there often, and obviously follow our podcast wherever you listen. So again, thank you very much. Have a very successful tax season. It's starting right now. And we hope to be talking to you here in the future. Thank you.